All right. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Nerd Talk podcast, Nerdy Talk for Nerdy Fans. I'm your host, Remington Kies. Today we got a very special guest in the building. We got author and also co-host of the Books and Brews podcast, Laura Vaziga.
Vosika.
Vaziga.
It's a
Tell
Czech name, Bohemian.
tell the audience a little bit about your books and kind of what you do.
Well, I started, well, actually, I've been writing since I was about 8, but I actually got serious about it maybe about 2007, 2008. And so I put out a series. This is the old cover. There's a new one now, but this is, let me see if I can get this
Disappeared
to
for a
show.
second there.
Yeah, the Bluebells of Scotland. And like
Nice.
I said, if you go online, you'll find a completely different cover now, but because I majored in music, playing trombone, this is the story. It's a time travel story of an arrogant, obnoxious trombonist who finds himself caught in medieval Scotland instead of with the orchestra he normally plays with in modern America. So it's a time travel story. And it's a bit of a tale of redemption, which I think can sound kind of heavy, but I think it's a very humorous story in a lot of ways because Sean is obnoxious. He's a terrible human being in many ways, but he's also the life of the party. You know, he's always cracking jokes. He's having fun, but he's causing his orchestra a lot of trouble. But they can't get rid of him because he's also making them a lot of money. And he's made all these musicians very well off financially because of all the business deals he's made. And so it actually covers 5 books about how he spends his time in medieval Scotland. And there's somebody there who looks just like him. They have to pretend to be the same person because nobody can explain how this extra person is there because, you know, it's medieval Scotland. The clans all know each other and so on.
Right.
So I had a lot of fun with it. I learned an awful lot about medieval history. I don't want to make anyone scared to come into my house, but I do know all sorts of ways they killed each other. I know how they handled horses charging at them across the field. And so the books also kind of get into this story of how Sean realizes he can't keep living the way he is, how he really begins to realize what I do impacts other people, and sometimes very, very badly, and I need to be better. And eventually he does find his way back to the modern time. And so then that's sort of the last third of the story. It's 5 books, but the second and third parts each are divided into 2 books. So books 2 and 3 are the middle of the story. Books 4 and 5 are the end of the story. So that's my time travel series. And they were very intense to write. I kind of got very into medieval Scotland to the point it was a little disconcerting sometimes because I taught music lessons mainly
Hmm.
to children to be writing intently about murder and mayhem and war and how to take down charging horses, and all of a sudden this child's in my room and I'm supposed to be playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. So that's an interesting aspect of the writing process. So then I wrote, well, I can't say I really wrote it. This is called The 4 Spheres, Habits for Building a
Ooh.
Better Life. Does that work better?
I
Yeah,
don't
that's
know.
the
It's kind of
problem.
like disappearing a little bit, but
Right. That's the problem with these virtual backgrounds. And so that's a journal about developing better habits. And it's based on the very old philosophy goes back to Greek times, if not earlier, that every day to live a well balanced, healthy life, you need to do something mental, something physical, something emotionally satisfying. And I believe the fourth one is spiritual. Let's see, I have quite a few books out, so I won't go through all of them. This one is Cooking with Rabbit. And again, I
oh,
think I need to stand up. And so the reason I wrote this is because, in addition to writing, and I don't teach music lessons now, I haven't for a few years. My husband and I have moved to acreage in Tennessee, and we have switched from a very suburban life to learning how to actually grow a garden. So we have a fairly large garden. We
What
have
section of Tennessee?
Tennessee. Yeah.
No, what
Yeah.
section?
Oh, what section? Eastern Tennessee, if you know where
That's funny. I
Cumberland
just
Gap
bought
is.
land over there.
Did you really? What part?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to say it live on air, but
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
I can
Yeah,
tell
I
you
don't blame
off
you.
screen.
Okay. Yeah.
I got a
So
lot of stalkers and haters on in my
isn't
audience.
that a
So
shame?
yeah.
That's terrible. People don't need to hate other people. But anyway, we raised meat rabbits, and about a year and a half ago, see, I started small. I said, "Can I keep a head of lettuce alive?" And when I could, then we got chickens. And I read so much about chickens. I got to thinking, my gosh, you need a PhD in animal husbandry to raise a chicken. And I found out it really is not that hard. So when
Right.
I kept the chickens alive for a few months, then we got our New Zealand white meat rabbits.
Ooh.
And so we raise them for meat. Right now, they're the only rabbits in the world who don't want to reproduce. So I don't know what's going on there. And then when I kept the rabbits alive and we moved here about a year and a half ago, we got our first 4 sheep. And I believe, including the 3 we just had processed, 14, 15, I think we've gone in a year and a half from 4 sheep up to about 17 or 18.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I need to get the rabbits with the sheep and like rabbits, listen up. Whatever they're doing, you need to do. Rabbits are supposed to reproduce, but these sheep, they're
Yeah, write them a book
prolific.
about it.
I actually am. That's one of my projects. So we started our homestead in Duluth, and we call it Glen Merrill Farms after the fictional castle in my books. And that means the Glen of Miracles. And so we started up there. And so that book is called High on Spirit Mountain. Anybody who knows Duluth now knows exactly where we lived, because Spirit Mountain it's not really a ski resort, but it's a ski hill, and with lodge and things. And
Yeah.
so this one, when we moved to Tennessee, we learned the wonderful word hollers. I had never heard that before. So are you familiar with that word?
No.
Okay. It's their kind of slang variation of hollows, down in the hollows,
Oh,
which means
I know
down in the
hollows.
ravine,
Yeah.
down in the valleys. So my second book, as I'm going through this learning process and changing from a very urban suburban lifestyle to a very country lifestyle and raising animals I had barely ever seen before. The second book is called Up Above the Hollers. So yes, I am working on writing the books on that.
Well, that's awesome. It must have been difficult to write some time travel stuff, because I know for me that's why I won't touch time travel in my books, is because I feel like trying to keep the timelines together there would mess around with me.
I didn't find it difficult. And one thing I did was I had a heading at the top of each chapter that told the place and the time. And so 2 of these characters look identical, and there's a reason for that you discover as you go through the series. But they have such totally, completely different personalities that every review I've gotten has said they weren't sure if they could keep it straight, but they actually found it very easy to keep even these 2 who look like identical twins, to keep them separate. One is Sean, he's loud, obnoxious, arrogant, kind of abrasive at times. Okay, most of the time. And then Neil is a medieval warrior. And at the time, of course, the church was very prominent, the center of life in a lot of ways, the center of society. And so he's been raised with that. And so he's very focused on nobility, honor, all these things that Sean is like, that's not fun. What do you want to do that for? So I found it fairly easy. And of course, like I said, it was very intense research that I really dug into absolutely everything. So I did make one mistake, which I realized later, and I'm not going to tell anyone what that is. I think very, very few people will know that detail of medieval history, so they won't catch it. So I'm not going to admit it. And if they do, I'll give them a free book or something, I guess.
Well, we're gonna get into our topics here tonight.
Okay.
Mostly movie related, but I think you could adapt and jump in at any with any of these points. You know, they're kind of vague. They don't go to any specific movies. You know,
Hmm.
um, our first topic is HBO Max. It's changing its well, it's currently under Max right now, but they're changing it back to HBO Max, correcting the stupid 2-year-old decision that they made, and we're it was inevitable because changing it from HBO Max just to Max wasn't a very good move. You know, HBO I think was a bigger brand and they should have built upon the success of HBO rather than starting a new brand and cutting the name off just to Max. You know, I feel
Well,
like it,
besides Switch, everything is called Max. There's TJ Max, there's Office Max, there's this Max, there's that Max. So I can see where that actually would have been almost confusing for
right,
customers.
and it doesn't help with the brand recognition. HBO has been an established brand for many
Right.
years. You
Hmm.
know, when they merged as a company, if you were going to change the name to anything, it should have been something to do with Warner Brothers. You know,
That would have
and
made
not
more
just
sense. Hmm.
and not just cutting it. If you didn't want to use the HBO name at all, I would have gone with something to do with Warner Brothers and not just calling it Max. It's making
Hmm.
it an unrecognizable property. Nobody's going to go, oh, what? Go to that Max service. I mean, even to this day, you
Right.
caught me in the intro there, just saying HBO, call it HBO Max because that's what I'm just so used to.
Right. What was their reason for changing it? Did they give one?
Because they merged as a company with Warner Brothers
Okay.
Discovery and HBO Max,
Hmm.
and instead of just keeping it with HBO Max, they went, oh, well, we'll just cut the HBO part, you know, because we're absorbing it into our company.
Yeah. I did warn you, I'm not big into movie news, but even I can say that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and I think it's good that they're going to finally change it back to
Hmm.
something a little bit more recognizable, and maybe it'll help with boosting sales.
Hmm.
Because I feel like if an audience is more like recognizable with the name, like with
Right.
Disney Plus, they didn't call it just Plus, you know, but
Hmm.
they're banking on that you know Disney and know their
Right.
properties and want to subscribe to see that stuff, you know.
Right. That makes a lot more sense. I mean,
But
like
the
if you told me Max, I wouldn't have known what that was about.
right, but you say HBO Max, you're like, oh well, I know HBO,
Everybody
you know,
knows HBO. Right.
right. And the problem is they have a new CEO, Zaslav, who
Hmm.
hasn't been doing anything with their properties. They've canceled Looney Tunes projects that are
Really.
very that when they sold it off to other companies were
Hmm.
received very well. So it's almost like they don't want the guy who's in charge doesn't want money. He wants to hinder the sales a little bit because
Yeah.
he's
What
making
what Looney Tunes projects?
there
I
was
don't
this
even know what Looney Tunes were still going. So.
they had 3 movies in production
Hmm.
when it was canceled, and a company was able to pick up 2 of them. One was Coyote versus Acme, which is
Hmm.
basically the Wile E. Coyote
Right.
um, um, in a court case against Acme products for
Hmm.
not working, and then the other one was The Day the Earth Blew Up, which was
Okay.
just released in theaters this past January,
Hmm.
and that did really well, like critic wise. You know,
Hmm.
it took a lot of money because it wasn't like widely released, but it
Hmm.
made a lot of people enjoyed it and said this was like Looney Tunes being back. You know, from the
Hmm. So, but did you say the critics didn't like it?
no, the critics loved it.
Oh,
It
okay.
just,
But the
it
audience
just
loved it
wasn't
though.
widely released.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think it was like
I just
2,000 theaters or something.
Okay, because I've always noticed on Rotten Tomatoes, it seems like the critic and audience are usually polar opposites.
Well, I feel like a lot of the critics, not me included, but a lot of the
Hmm.
other critics are like very stuck up, and like
Hmm.
if it's not like high class cinema, they don't want
Hmm.
nothing to do with it. If it's like any remotely thing to do with a kids movie or a
Right.
comedy or something, I don't know, they want it to always be serious or something. That's the stuff that gets the awards recognition.
Well, we need comedy too.
Absolutely, that's what I read. I read my books are all comedies. They
Hmm.
have something to do with comedy and science fiction. That's what I grew up watching. So
Hmm.
I write just like how would want to see this as a TV show.
That's kind of, I'd say, what I do too. What's the old advice? Write the book that you want to read.
Right. Right, and I've got a lot of compliments for my latest book, like, oh, I just couldn't put it down. I just had to keep reading to the end because I just couldn't put it down. I wanted to know what was going on next, you know?
Isn't that great as an author to hear that?
Oh, it's
Those are
really
some of my
amazing.
favorite reviews when people say, "Don't pick this book up. You'll be up all night."
Right. It's the last review I got from somebody was like I was gonna read it because it was yours, but
Hmm.
the way the cover and the way it was presented, like it kind of turned me off a bit. But the moment I picked up and started reading it, I was hooked.
Hmm.
So
That's great.
that was a compliment as much
Hmm.
as I could take, you know.
Right.
Our next segment is AMC Movie Theaters announces a 50% off movie ticket on Wednesdays. Half off, making it easier to catch the latest movies without breaking your wallet. What will this mean for moviegoers? Whether it's enough to bring back the magic of midweek cinema. So I guess the sales were tanking for during the week, and mostly
Hmm.
people were going to see stuff on the weekends.
Hmm.
And what do you think this will boost sales? Get people in the
I
movies?
think I would think it would. I would, everybody loves a discount, and half off is that's a really good discount. Um, I thought
Especially
they
with
had
movie tickets being as expensive as they are
right,
nowadays.
right. Well, and that's been a kind of bringing together authorship in movies. That's been a huge frustration to a lot of authors that a lot of us were pricing our Kindle books at 2.99 and people were complaining that's too expensive, and it's like, yeah, but you'll go pay 17 bucks for a ticket for the movies, and then you'll buy $20 worth of popcorn and pop, or 30. So by the time you pay for two people and buy some popcorn and pop, you're spending, I don't know, $60 to go to a
Right.
movie for an hour and a half, because I think movies are getting shorter in a lot of ways, aren't they?
Depends on the genre.
Hmm.
Like
Okay.
I just saw Sinners, and that's
Okay.
easily like a 3 hour movie.
Okay. And if you have that kind of time, and I suspect that we're living in a very fast-paced world, and maybe they figure people just don't have 3 hours to sit. But, as an author, I say you're willing to spend 60 bucks for maybe a couple hours,
Hmm.
that you're never getting that time back. You have to remember that movie. You can't watch it over and over, but you don't want to pay $3 for a
Right.
book that you can read over and over. But I do think, yeah, I absolutely think that discounting will bring people back in, because that's a huge savings. But didn't they have a Tuesday discount too?
Some movie theaters do, but not all
Okay.
of them. Not all of them offer it.
Okay.
And and like a couple of years ago, like right before the pandemic, they used to have like
Hmm.
a student discount, and the movie
Okay.
theater near my house doesn't do that. It doesn't offer it anymore. So
Okay.
so it seems like they've taken it away for a while because of the pandemic, and it looks like they're trying to get more people, more butts in the seats.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of habits changed when everybody was locked down, and I'm surprised that it's taken them this long. I would think this has been an issue since 2020.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, and usually they're slow to the punch when it comes to like
Hmm.
problems like that. Like I
Hmm.
know there's some theaters that just look raggedy and taking them years to get them up to standard. You know?
That's true. Now, are the AMC, I'm trying to think, my husband and I used to go to this wonderful theater up in Duluth, and it had the lounge chair type thing where you could
Yeah, AMC
recline.
is
You
very
could
much a premium.
I thought so. I thought it was. Yeah. Now, at this theater, and it may have been an AMC, you could order pizza, you could order wings, you could order a glass of wine to watch your
Yeah,
movie with. So that's the same AMC?
yeah. I would think most like bigger theater chains like that are
Hmm.
offering all that other stuff because it's getting people in. You know, I think people got
Right.
sick of like you could go to like a show and like a Broadway show or something, and they wanted that
Mhm.
kind of same experience from a movie theater. You know?
Right, right. Because I can remember the movie theaters when I was a kid. Like, I hate to, date myself, but I can remember being in the movie theater when some of the Star Wars movies first came out, and that was huge. But I do
Yeah.
remember those movie theaters as being kind of cheap, kind of, the concrete floor, the
Yeah.
stickiness and the popcorn all over the floor, which it's an atmosphere. Some
Right.
people like it. But I do like those AMCs with their plush recliners and a
The
nicer
one the one
variety of what you can eat and drink.
the one near my house has motion seats for like certain movies. So like if
Oh,
you go,
cool.
yeah, so if you
Okay.
see like a movie like Star Wars or something, the
Hmm.
seats will move and vibrate and all that. So
Do they have to give a warning like to pregnant women or people with heart
yeah,
conditions?
yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, we just went. There are a couple places in Gatlinburg. I think both of them are in Gatlinburg, where you sit in those seats, and maybe more extreme, unless AMC has the same thing. And it's just amazing. You're flying over the country, and the floor in front of you literally drops out from under you. So you suddenly feel
Wow.
like you're suspended in the air. And then the seats are tilting like this, and they're pointing down as you're flying toward the water and then coming back up. At some point, they have wind blowing in your face, and they even splash you with water when you're looking at, I think it's when you're looking at whales. So it would be really cool to see more of that in just regular movie theaters.
Yeah, that would be an experience right there. That
Mhm.
sounds crazy.
Yeah, well, if you're going to be anywhere near, Gatlinburg is a great place to go, and they have a lot of neat things like that.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. The next segment is YouTube is cracking down on their fake trailer channels, like clickbait channels. Um, and maybe this is going to clean up the feed. I don't know if you're familiar. I don't know how many movies movie trailers you see on YouTube, but there's a lot of channels right now making money and profit off the making a fake trailer if they know a movie's
Mhm.
coming out. So you take your attention thinking it's the real movie trailer, and it's like
Mhm.
AI or somebody put like clips of another movie and says, "Oh, this is the new Spider-Man trailer. This is the new Superman trailer." What are your thoughts on YouTube finally cracking down and deleting these channels and
Um,
removing monetization so you can't make money off
right. I
scamming
would
people?
say I have two thoughts on that, which are not necessarily mutually exclusive. One is, yeah, if people are just putting fake stuff out there, it's a way of protecting the consumer. But I was just listening to a video yesterday, the day before, and it was talking about how many people are making a living. I would even say making a killing on YouTube, no pun intended. You'll see where I'm going with that, by doing pranks.
Yeah,
And so these pranks are getting out of hand. There was one recently where they kicked in some guy's door at 2 a.m. and lo and behold, he shot one of them. And they're like, but man, it was a prank. Well,
yeah,
how in the world was the homeowner supposed to know that? I forget what the other one was. It was, and it's not just these two, there are more. But why isn't YouTube cracking down on things like that, where people literally think they're being robbed? They think they're about to be shot. They think they're having their home broken into. And
hmm
these YouTubers go, it's just a prank. It's like, well, how's anyone supposed to know that? So why isn't YouTube cracking down on those? Or is that coming maybe?
I'm sure it's coming because a couple of years ago they had a big adpocalypse about stuff like that. When I don't know if you're familiar, Logan Paul did that video
The
of him
name
in
is familiar. The
he's the
name's
guy who
familiar.
filmed himself in the suicide forest. And after that, YouTube
What
demonetized
remind
a
me what
lot of
the
videos.
what is the suicide forest? I remember that name, but I don't
It's like
remember
when
the
you in
details.
Japan where they have
Mhm.
where people go to hang themselves or
Okay.
unalive themselves, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and
And
he was
so he
filming
filmed
dead bodies
himself.
in there,
Oh,
and Yeah, and
Yeah.
that was a big deal, and a lot of people lost monetization because they
Mm-hmm.
went on a whole spree of demonetizing videos. So
Okay.
I'm sure I can see that coming for these fake trailers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They've
Mm-hmm.
already demonetized a lot of these people who were doing it and deceiving
Mm-hmm.
people. So um,
Now, I'm just curious when they put out a parody fake trailer, is it like obvious parody or does it look like it could just be the real
some are
trailer?
obvious, but some are really deceptive, and they
Mm-hmm.
confuse a lot of people who aren't everyday moviegoers. You know, who
Okay.
maybe just want to go look up the new trailer, or maybe want to go, especially kids. They really prey on kids who don't know
Mm-hmm.
any better and like, the casual consumers. You know.
Yeah, I'm just curious, depending how like the movie they are they actually increasing business for the movie or does it not do that?
Well, because I think YouTube's based on a monetization system, it
Hmm.
takes away from the company making money,
Okay.
and the
Okay.
money goes to whoever makes this video.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, to me, it sounds like, yeah, they probably should crack down on that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a big deal. I think it's going to be great for the industry moving forward. So there's
Hmm.
not a lot of confusion with like casual audiences. You know.
Right. Well, and you could also have, depending what's in the trailer, people ending up being very disappointed or frustrated with the movie if they find what I saw in the trailer really isn't what I'm getting. You know,
Right.
you'd have a lot of angry customers then.
Right. Absolutely. And the last topic, we have the last topic. It's going to be about summer movies. What will hit and what will miss. The summer of 2025 is stacked with sequels, reboots, and a few wild cards. While predicting the box office winners and surprise flops, which movie do you think might be the do great or be a big disappointment? I got a list of movies if you don't know what's coming out this summer.
You'll have to tell me what's coming out this summer.
We got Karate Kid Legends, the live action version of How to Train Your Dragon. We got Lilo and Stitch, Jurassic World Rebirth, which I haven't seen a trailer for. It's kind of new. I got
Hmm.
Superman, Fantastic Four, Naked Gun reboot, and Freaky Friday sequel. So
Really? That's
yeah,
being redone. Because
yeah.
I don't
With
think that's been done since the 70s, maybe?
no, they had one in the
Let,
2000s.
oh, did they? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So with
See, again, I'm dating myself. I remember the one in the 70s. What do I think? I mean, it really depends on the audience because kids are probably going to like Lilo and Stitch, whereas a lot of people are going to like the comedy Naked Gun. You know, that's a classic. Um, what was the other one? Superman. I think there's
yeah,
always going to be a market for Superman. I think there's always a market for superheroes in general. It just seems like when did Marvel come out? When did the superhero movies and things really start? Was that maybe about the 50s or 60s?
for comic books,
Well, comic books I think would have been way earlier than that, right?
the
But for
movies didn't start
movies,
coming out till like 90s, like late 90s.
really? Okay,
Yeah,
well,
and then they really blew up around 2009 with Iron Man.
okay. Because what I'm thinking of is the old Batman TV series,
Oh, man,
you
that's
know,
DC. That's a
Bill
whole other company.
Cow. Okay, okay.
Yeah,
But
that
still
that was 60s. That was
superheroes.
66.
Right. Yeah, still superheroes though. And
Yeah.
so I think that vigilantes and superheroes, people love them. You know, they want to
Mhm.
feel that there is someone who can set things right. They want to feel that there's someone who can take on all the evil in the world. So I would tend to think that one's going to do well. But I think some of it's going to depend on how the movie is made. I think some people are really getting tired of their beloved superheroes being turned into things they never were, you know, like, I don't know, making a man a woman or whatever. It's like, but I like Superman as he was.
Right.
And so I think if they do a lot of that stuff, I think we're in a period where there's a little bit of a backlash to changing the heroes and the classic characters too much. And I looked at the Superman trailer, and it looks like they kept him very much as he was, the kind of geeky Clark Kent by day and tough Superman by night. Although I did get a kick out of the trailer, and the whole premise is I just saved the world and you're arresting me? What
Right.
the heck? So that did intrigue me as to where they were going to go with that line. And what were some of the other movies you said?
I know we talked a little bit of Naked Gun, but the guy who's rebooting Naked Gun is going to be the guy who created Family Guy. So I
Crane
don't know if
Family Guy.
created Family Guy.
Oh, Family. Okay, yeah, yeah. I
So
enjoyed
he's
Family Guy.
we got Lilo and Stitch, How to Train Your Dragon.
That one I'd be
Jurassic.
interested in seeing. I
Yeah, I'm
mean,
excited about How to Train Your Dragon. I never saw the animated one, so that's definitely
yeah, I don't think I did, but even the concept that they could do more of a live action, I'm going to assume that the dragon is a lot of CGI,
yeah.
unless they bred real dragons and I didn't hear about it. um, I'd be excited about that in part because one of the books that I didn't hold up for you, my husband and I co-wrote together, and it's about a little boy whose parents are insanely busy with their jobs, and you don't really know, is this little boy extremely imaginative and very deep in his fantasy world, or is he really experiencing these things? And part of the storyline there, he goes in his imagination to this sort of medieval-esque kingdom where he's the best friend of the prince and now the king Methred, and they're always battling this red dragon. So I think it's really cool to think that maybe someday my book could be turned into an actual live action movie if
Yeah.
they can create dragons.
I have a book. My first book out is the guy has the power of a dragon in his fist.
Okay, what kind of a power? Like the strength or like breathing fire?
He's got the fire ability, and he's got yeah, I guess the strength too. There's a little bit. He's got a thing called Dragon Fist that
Mhm.
he can use. He's got the dragon all around his arm. But
Okay,
yeah. So
so you would love to see that turned into a movie too with
absolutely, I would love. I would. That would be a dream. Um, I guess Jurassic World's up there too, and Karate Kid. I don't know if you're familiar with Karate Kid being a big thing the last
yeah,
couple of
I,
years.
I remember, and I think wasn't there a sequel to Karate Kid?
There's four.
Four. Okay, yeah, I did tell you I'm not huge into movies. We have a few we really really love. Are you familiar with Jojo Rabbit?
No.
Oh, I think it's one of the best movies ever made. And this sounds terrible to begin with, but it's the funniest movie you will ever see about Hitler and Nazis, which
Okay,
sounds
I was just gonna
terrible.
ask if it was the Nazi one. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
never.
But it's such a profound movie, even though it's hilarious in so many scenes, because it's also telling you this very serious message about how these kids were completely brainwashed, how they were taught by everyone around them that this is the proper thing, that Jews really are these scary people with scales and forked tongues and things. And this child is so innocent, that you can't really get upset with him thinking these things because it's what he's been taught.
Right.
And his mother, I don't want to give away anything about his mother, she doesn't agree with anything he's being taught, but she's also in a position where she can't let him know too much of anything because then she's going to be dead. And he ends up meeting a Jewish girl and bit by bit realizing I've been lied to.
Right.
This is not only is she not all these things they told me she was, she's a very nice person. And it goes from his imaginary friend is Hitler, and Hitler is hilarious, to gradually, as he figures these things out, his imaginary friend version of Hitler starts to become more and more like the real Hitler, just a very nasty person. So I think it's a wonderful movie. It's well told to give a good message while not being too heavy. You know, you
It's
can
funny that
watch.
you mentioned that because as a black man, that's how I felt about Sinners. And I don't, as a black man, I do not like slave movies. I absolutely can't
Okay.
stand slave movies. I think as in society, we should move past all that slavery stuff and
Hmm.
move forward into more positive depictions of black people. Right? I'm sick of seeing the struggle and all that. I want to
Yeah.
see us on a positive note. But Sinners
I
came out, and it's a
what is
slave movie.
Sinners about?
Huh?
What is Sinners about?
It's about two brothers in the Great Depression era when it's like Jim Crow, all that, and they're going back to their family plantation, and they buy this sawmill from a bunch of racists, but in the
Hmm.
midst of them opening up like a nightclub,
Hmm.
vampires show up.
Vampires?
Yeah,
Vampires.
yeah, and I'm telling you, the first 2/3 of the movie has nothing to do with vampires. It's just the
Hmm.
ending. But the
So that
setup
comes
is
out of
so
the.
good you
Uh-huh.
forget it's a vampire movie.
Oh, that's funny. So, but that puts a whole different twist on it too. I'm trying to remember what was the one I was thinking about it. There's a really fantastic movie. It's about a man, I think maybe in the 80s or 90s, and he's black, which I think is completely incidental to the story, but it's very the positive portrayal you're talking about. His wife leaves him. He's got this little boy, maybe 5 years old. All these awful things happen, and he ends up in absolute financial crisis. And I believe it's based on a true story. But
Hmm.
he finds this program where he can get training for a really good job, I think, in the financial world. And it's about how he ends up homeless and trying to get to this shelter every night before it fills up with his son. And it's just, he is such a devoted father. And it's such a wonderful story about perseverance and being a devoted father and making your life better despite all the awful things that you couldn't control. And Hidden Figures, have you seen that?
I haven't seen that yet, but it's gonna go right on my list.
It's a wonderful movie. It's just a wonderful movie, and it's about three women who worked for NASA, and it is about the discrimination they faced. Like there's one scene where this poor woman, she's not allowed to use the white people's bathroom, and
Yeah.
so she has to run across campus, and she's always lugging her heavy stack of computations, and she's sitting on the toilet still doing her work and then trying to run back in her heels. And finally, one day, the boss says, "Why are you gone so long?" And she says, "Because I'm not allowed to use the toilet here." And he takes a sledgehammer and he knocks down the sign and he says, "You use the bathroom here."
Well, it's
And
crazy.
it's,
I've seen clips of this movie, and you know
mhm,
what's crazy? I was down in Tennessee 2 years ago, and near
mhm.
Johnson City, but like out in the
Okay.
rural part of it, and there was still a place that had a whites only sign.
Seriously.
Yeah, man. And I went there, and I didn't care. I didn't care. I still went over and chatted with everybody, and
I'm
at least
assuming nobody else cared either.
yeah, they didn't. They didn't. Not to my face, they didn't.
Hmm. Hmm.
They still sold me food. I went over for a Coke and a cheeseburger, and
I'd
I
be
was cool with
very
everybody. And
curious if they just kind of never got around to taking that down, or,
I
if
don't
they
know,
left
but I
it
just know
there as a
stuff like that
reminder.
still exists. You know?
Right. That's shocking.
Yeah.
I would not have expected that. I lived in Biloxi, Mississippi for a whopping 2 months in the 70s. And the one thing I noticed, mind you, I was in fourth grade, it seemed to me like everybody got along just great. The only thing
Right.
that jumped out to me was I came, well, I grew up in the Air Force, but my parents are from Minnesota, so very northern culture. And so my best friend's mom's boyfriend took us out for ice cream. He bought me an ice cream, and I said, "Thank you." And my friend was, "Oh, thank you." what? I mean, she acted like I just, knifed him or something.
Yeah.
She was so horrified. And I was like, I thanked him. And so I said, thank you for the ice cream. And she said, thank you, sir. And she was genuinely horrified
Yeah.
that I had not addressed him as sir. And that's one of the things I've really liked about moving to the South. I think a lot of people give it a bad rap, but I have
Right.
found everybody's so polite here and just genuinely warm
I
and
agree.
genuinely caring.
I've not met any person in there that I didn't like. Everyone was like
Mhm.
friendly, went over and chatted with
Yeah.
me, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, it's been very, very warm and friendly. And I didn't think people in Minnesota were cold-hearted or anything like that, but I think there was a lot of maybe a more surface niceness out in public. And then even
Mhm.
when you really met someone you connected with, there was a lot of let's get together. Yeah, we have to get
Right.
together. And you both genuinely mean it, but life just seems so busy. And I found in the South, it seems like people really follow through more.
Right.
And when they say, let's get together, they're going to follow through on that. And I
Yeah.
appreciate that because I probably have absorbed that northern culture of life is always so busy. I intend to follow through, but I don't. So I really appreciate it when other people do.
Right. Well, that's the end of our show. There, we're gonna be running out of time pretty soon. We got only a little bit left of the show, but thank you guys for watching the entire stream and all the people who watch it later in the clips part. Thank you for watching us there too. Um, Laura, would you like to tell my fans where they might be able to find you, social media, where they can find your books?
Yep, the best place to find me and links to everything is lauravosica.com. I believe bluebellschronicles.com will also take you to the same place. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, laura.vosica.author. I'm on X as Gabriel Sorn Books. And so those are the best places. And if you want to see my adorable sheep and rabbits, you can go to glenmerrillfarms.wordpress.com.
Awesome. And you can find my books at Walmart, Amazon, Barnes and Noble under either Remington Kai's, or you can look up their title, Galactic Guardians, Eternal Flame, or Homie and the Redneck. They're all up there. Links for everything will be in the description below if you guys want to check us out. I'm also on Facebook under Remington Kai's, Instagram Nerd Talk Podcast, uh, X. I'm on everything. So go check us out. Let us know you caught us from the podcast, and yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out. All right.